Well, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show tonight. Oh, we've got a good show tonight. I hope you guys have had a great week so far. Just 2 days. Hopefully, you had a great weekend. Glad to be here. Tonight, we are going to be talking about keeping track of your diabetes, how to stay on track with your diabetes. If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E, and the E stands for endocrinology. And I help you understand your bodies so that you can take charge of your health, avoid complications, and live a healthy, fulfilling life. We are excited tonight because we're going to have a great conversation about one of my favorite topics. Really, is talking to people about blood sugars and how to use that to keep track of their diabetes. If you are new to the channel also, go ahead and put new in the comments. We would love to welcome you here. If you have a question, go ahead and put that in the comments with a Q. And if you've not already done so, make sure that you go to our social media platforms and go ahead and check us out on all the different platforms we have. LinkedIn, we've got TikTok here, of course, on Monday nights at 7. We are here every week, and then Twitter, and then of course buymeacoffee.com. If you'd like to see more exciting content from us, once again here at 7 o'clock on Mondays. We've got our TikTok that comes out on Fridays at 10 o'clock. And then every day our Twitter puts out inspirational thoughts, recipes, just really things to help you kind of get through life. So we thank you for being here. In the comments tonight, I want you to answer the question. Do you currently check your blood sugars? Yes or no? Yes or no? Do you currently check your blood sugars? It is a huge issue that we see around the world and in our country. Diabetes is, right? We've said that here on this channel already. There are almost 500 million people around the world that live with diabetes, and 34.2 million people in the United States alone. There are people who are living with prediabetes, right? So if we take everyone together, we're almost talking about 100 million people in the United States. And then, of course, around the world, 500 million with diabetes. In the United States, that almost 100 million are people who are at risk or who are living with diabetes. We have not been very good at curtailing the spread of diabetes. It is a huge issue. And tonight we're going to spend some time talking about the best ways to keep track of that. And let me just pop up here. This is where we're heading, right? So why should I check blood sugars, right? How glucose meters work, and tell you some of the interesting things that may be coming down the pike, right? Barriers to checking. Why do people not check their blood sugars? When should you check? How should you check? And then giving you some tips to build checking into your day. So that's where we're heading tonight. So stay around and stay tuned, and we will get to those here in just a minute. Let's see who is joining us tonight. We've got Maria. Maria saying good morning from the Philippines. Hey, Maria, how are you doing this morning, this evening? I think you guys are about 12 hours ahead of us, I believe. And then Lauren. Hello, Lauren. How are you? Welcome. Glad that you are here. Maria is, of course, just reminding everyone about the Q and putting new into the comments so that we can go ahead and welcome you to our show tonight. So awesome. Let's see. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get started? We are going to talk about our spend some time talking through this list. And once again, let me back up and let me start a different way. So I was in the car just yesterday, and I was listening to something in preparation for today. and my son asked me a question. He said, why do a lot of places tell you what to do, but they don't tell you how to do it? Right? And so tonight we're going to walk through blood sugars. What are blood sugars? Why are they important? Right? And then we're going to give you the how-to. Right? So you can thank my son for pushing and saying, hey, Daddy, what about the how-to? People really kind of know what to do, but what about the how-to? Okay. So why should I check my blood sugars? Why should I check my blood sugars? So you can know what's going on. Right? That's the bottom line. You check your blood sugars so that you can know what's going on. Now, we can throw all kinds of statistics and studies, whether it's the DCCT trials, the UKPDS, those are the big diabetes trials that came out that said that it is important and it is good to control blood sugars. And in fact, they said that if we can get an A1C below 7, that's an A1C below 7. That's why a lot of things that you hear will talk about that number 7, right? If we can get our A1C below 7, then we begin decreasing the complications that come from diabetes. So that's one of the things that we are shooting for. And so a lot of people know those numbers, right? Why, but you don't know why we do that, right? We just, hey, that's the number we got to get to. And that is because that's what the studies have shown has been very instrumental in decreasing complications. But one of the reasons for checking blood sugar is so that you know what's happening in your body. Remember, we're talking about understanding our bodies. We give you a sense of control, because if you know what's going on in your body, if you know what that blood sugar is, it's kind of like, I tell a story about, driving down the highway, and I'm driving down the highway and I'm minding my business. I'm not bumping into anyone. I'm going the speed limit, and a state trooper pulls in behind me, right? And what do? Yes, you're right. I look down and I ease up off the gas, right? I have control of my behavior. Even though I'm not doing anything, quote unquote, wrong, I still have the ability to control what I'm doing. It helps you to make decisions about your blood sugars, about treatment, about your behavior, right? Thanksgiving is coming up. That's right. In just a little bit about a week, right? Thanksgiving is going to be here. And on those days, right, having a blood sugar helps you make decisions about that peach cobbler, or that how much of that dressing that you're going to have, or that sweet potato pie. So knowing the blood sugar gives you a sense of control. It helps you to make decisions about treatment. It gives you focus, right? Like that state trooper I mentioned, right? And it helps you to see progress. It says yo, right? It helps you to see progress, because it's kind of like saving money, right? It's kind of like saving money. When I save money, when I used to see that, right, that progress getting bigger and bigger, guess what I wanted to do? That's right. I wanted to put some more money in there. And it's the same thing with things like weight loss, right? So when people can see that they are making progress, then they're more likely to engage and to connect and to continue that trend, right? So those are the reasons why we check blood sugars. So many different reasons that also help with our health in general. Now, so aside from these things, right, we know that it is a way to help us avoid complications, right? So retinopathy and neuropathy and nephropathy and all the other things that we talk about. But those are some reasons that you should check your blood sugar. It helps to give you a sense of control. And when we have a sense of control, right, we feel like we can do it. All right. So how do blood glucose monitors work? Glucose monitors, they have worked the same for years and years and years. I think in the 1960s is when they came out with the technology. So basically what happens, the blood sugar, right? So there's sugar running around in your blood, and we take some of that blood and we put it on that little strip, right? That's test strip that people talk about. And there is an enzymatic reaction. There's a reaction that goes on, and it gives off either something that the meter can monitor, whether it's light, right? So there's an electric current that goes through. It sees a wavelength of light, and it correlates that with a blood sugar. Or there's a current that goes through it, and based on the amount of current that goes through, then it gives a number, right? So blood glucose monitors are giving you a number based on this reaction that's going on, right? Based on the reaction that's going on. And we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the consequence of that idea in a minute or in a little while. So that's how blood glucose monitors work. You take a drop of blood, and that blood goes through the system, and it gives you a number. Now, there are continuous glucose monitors, and you'll see that on the screen. In the lower right-hand corner is a regular monitor, and then in the upper left corner is a continuous monitor that someone wears, and you wear that continuously for, depending on which one you're on, anywhere from 7 to 14 days. And there's even one that's an implantable. It's an implantable continuous monitor that's monitoring blood sugars continuously, and that one currently is implanted for about 3 months. They're, of course, working. For those of you who are outside the United States, you probably have already seen some of the longer continuous monitors that are there. In the United States, we have not gotten to that point as yet, right? So that's how monitors work. They all require blood, whether it's a finger stick that we're going to be doing, or whether it's the insertion of a small cannula under the skin so that it can get the blood, right? So that's how monitors work. So what are some barriers? Why do people not check, right? So the reason people don't check is for the same reason that there are a lot of other things that we don't do. It's inconvenient. People don't do things that are inconvenient, right? Even if that thing is supposedly good for you, people don't do things that are inconvenient. It's painful. Yeah, I just said that you have to take some blood, right? You got to take some blood out of the finger, right, with a lancet, and that can be painful. People say, well, it doesn't make a difference. Every time I check my blood sugar, it's the same thing. So why check, right? I'm just going to kind of bury my head in the sand, or I don't have a good way of treating it anyway. So why should I check? And then it feels restrictive. It feels like they're being confined, right? So let's talk about a little bit of these. So the painful part, let's jump to that one really quickly. One thing that sometimes happens is that on the glucose meter or the lancing device, there is a little dial. And if you've not seen that on your glucose meter or in your lancing device, take a look at it, right? Whether it's around the diameter, or there's a little wheel that's at the top of it. And that wheel helps you to either make the lancet longer, go in deeper, or going more shallowly, right? So the deeper it goes, of course, the more painful that can be, right? So you'll just have to kind of play around with that and see what depth is best for you. It could be that you're just putting it in too far, right? That's one of the things that can happen there. In terms of making a difference, you know, in one of the slides we said earlier that it gives you control. It gives you control. And so if it's not making a difference, then the question becomes, right, how do we get better blood sugar control? Right? How do we get? And so that's a conversation to have with your provider. Hey, I'm checking my blood sugar all the time, right? Just like you're telling me to do. And I'm checking, and it's never different. What do we need to do to get it to be in a better range, right? So that's a conversation. So we don't want to not check simply because it's not making a difference, right? And then restrictive. So one of the beautiful things about everything that we do as human beings is that we can, in our minds, right, decide how something impacts us. So whatever happens, our response to that is what determines our behavior. And so I think what's happened in a lot of cases is we have made checking blood sugar seem like an arduous task. And in our tips, we're going to talk a little bit about that coming up. But I want to convince you that this is something that we're doing that is beneficial to you. And when things are beneficial for us, for our bodies, helping us to understand, helping us make differences, helping us make choices, helping us live better, more fulfilling lives, right? I would propose that it is something that we can look at in a positive light. So how do we look at this? Not in a, oh my God, I got to check my blood sugar again. Oh, I've got to do that again, right? How do we reframe this and say, hey, this is something that I'm doing that is beneficial for me. Okay. All right. So let's come back out here and let's take a look and let's see what's going on. Let's see, who do we have with us? So some people are answering the question. So Latine Thomas, hey Latine, how are you? Do you oversee any trials for diabetes? Is her question. Do you oversee any trials for diabetes? Good question. And currently we don't. We in our practice were involved in trials years ago, but we've not recently. Recently, I've actually been contacted by a physician who does research and who's interested in doing that. But currently, we don't have any research going on in our practice. So Maria's saying, hey, Latane. She's kind of greeting her. Latane said, hello, love this, my great doctor. Awesome. Good to see you, Latane. Oh, blind guy, his wife. I came in on my favorite scene again. This layout always has the best info. Thank you so much for that. All right, and then there we go. Maria's saying, hey, blind guy, his wife, their lives. Awesome. All right. So yeah, so good guys. So that's really kind of the setup, right? The crux of what we're going to talk about for the rest of tonight, right? That's the setup. So why do we check blood sugars? What's available out there for blood sugars? What are the reasons that people don't check blood sugars? And then our final, our rest of our discussion is going to be answering some of your questions, but also giving you some tips on how to incorporate blood sugar checking into your day, right? Because that's the thing. Ultimately, let me say it again. People don't do things that are not convenient. We do things either to avoid pain or for pleasure. Okay, so it's the reason why, if you plan to exercise and you join the gym, and the gym is 5, 10, whatever number of miles away from where you are, and you've got to come home, you got to get your stuff, and then you've got to leave your house, and then you've got to go back to the gym, guess what? You are unlikely to do that, right? So either in the morning you take your stuff with you and you drive by the gym before you come to work, right? Or you do something different, right? You do some other kind of exercising. Because that extra thing that you got to do, we don't do that. We don't do that easily. We don't do that well. If you've got to, okay, let's talk a little bit about diets, right? If you have got to go and buy the food when you're hungry and bring it home and cook that night to eat, you're likely not going to be on your diet that night. Okay? Because it's inconvenient. And so we want to make things convenient. We want to try and incorporate it into our lives. And that's what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. All right. So let's see. We have some questions that we can answer. let's see, what do we have? here's here's a good one. And that one is interesting. And it says, what is the best glucose meter? What is the best glucose meter? So glucose meters, and we just talked a little bit about how they worked, right? So they take blood and they have this reaction that goes on, and based on either the wavelength of light that they see, or a current that they measure, then they show what the blood sugar is. So there's a correlation, there's a formula that goes on with it. And so as a result, blood sugars, and let me say this, I want you guys to listen. What you get on the meter is not an absolute number. Whoa. Yeah. So what you get on the meter is not an absolute number. It is a representation. It is a formula. It is it's an indication of what the blood sugar is. And so how do they like basically test these meters? They use the strip and they put the blood on it and they compare that to what they get if they actually draw blood from you, take it to the lab, and see what the blood is. And those two are supposed to kind of mirror each other, and it's supposed to be pretty close to each other. And so when you look at glucose meters, the glucose meters have a something called a MARD, M-A-R-D, and it is a representation of the variance, right? It's a representation of the variance that they see when they measure. And so the lower the MARD, the lower that number is, the more accurate that meter can be, or more accurate the meter should be. I shouldn't say can be. That's really what it's supposed to be. So getting a meter that has a lower MARD is what we want to do. Now, the lower we get, sometimes the more expensive that can be. So there's a balance that we've got to play. So anything that is less than so the representation is allowed to be 20% different. Yeah. So if you get 1 meter and you get a blood sugar, and you get a different meter and you get a blood sugar, those are allowed to be 20% different and still be considered within the same ballpark, right? So for instance, if you get a meter and you measure a blood sugar and it's 100, and you get a different meter and you measure a blood sugar, that next blood sugar, if it's between 80, right, 20% lower, or 120, 20% higher, then all those numbers from 80 to 120 are considered to be within within a reasonable norm. Okay, that's the current standard, and that's what we use here in the United States. That's what we use around the world. So, and in the modern era, a lot of the meters, a lot of them don't even go up to 20. They're much better than that. Technology is much better. And so we want to get one that has the lowest technology for the cost, right? Because remember, cost is also an issue. So the lower we get on that number, right, the better that meter is supposed to be, well, the more expensive it is. So as an example, if you have I'm going to pick a number, and we say anything that's 10 or less is probably reasonable. 10, 11, 12. Probably reasonable. So if you have a meter that has a 10% difference or MARD, and you have a meter and it's cost you, I don't know, $25, $30, and then there's a meter that has a MARD of 2, which is really accurate, really good, and it costs $100, $150, right? Then the difference is really not that big in terms of measuring blood sugars to spend that amount of money. I don't know if that makes sense, right? So there's a balance that we've got to play. So having said that, the meter that you want to get is the one that has the best MARD, or that best variance for the cost. And so a lot of the meters, One Touches, Freestyles, AccuCheck, even the Walmart brand, and the Walmart brand may be a little higher, in terms of the variance. But any of those meters are actually pretty good. And if you look, I mean, a lot of the modern meters, if you look at their boxes, they are not actually even going up to 20. I mean, they're much better than that. Okay, very good question. Very good question. Let's see. Why is my reading so different from 1 meter to right? So why is my reading so different from 1 meter to the other? And that's it. That's it right there. Because they're allowed to be, have this variance between them. In fact, here's another interesting point that you may find. If you prick your finger and you use that drop of blood and you use your meter and you check your meter, right, and you get a number. If you use that exact same drop of blood, squeeze a little bit more, take your meter and measure it again, that second drop that you used on that same meter is also allowed to be 20% different. Yeah. Now, most of the time it's, pretty reasonable and it falls within a close number, but that's still allowed to be there. Right, so that's one of the reasons that you may see that your meter is different from others. What app do you use to track carbs / glucose readings? And what app do I use? And my recommendation for apps really is the simplest one. And sometimes the simplest one is the one that comes with your meter. A lot of the meters now, the glucose meters, have an app that can go on your phone, on your computer, and it allows you to either Bluetooth or via USB connect to a computer and or to your phone. And so that app can pull the data in. Now, we use one in our office that allows us to pull multiple meters into it. But most of them now will allow you to connect via Bluetooth or some interface device. And the one that we use has a device that I think it costs about $35, but it allows us to pull data from a lot of different meters. The other thing that happens is if you use an iPhone, and I can't speak to the Android. If you have an Android and you know about this, you can put it in the comments. If you have an iPhone, the iHealth app that's on the iPhone will connect with a lot of the different apps for the meters. And so it's kind of like a central standardized app where you can pull all the data in. Okay, so very good question. Let's see. So can you tell if your sugar spikes without a monitor? Okay, let's see. Who asked that question? Can you tell? So I'm going to answer this question in two different ways, right? So I'm going to put on my official hat for a minute, and then I'm going to put on my little silly hat. So the official line is that you can't really tell with any certainty, right? Now, people will say that they can feel when their blood sugar is rising, and I don't doubt that, right? Because your body is a pretty interesting and a very sophisticated machine. And so it is not, it's not far-fetched to think that people can tell when their blood sugars are rising. The question really is, can you tell accurately what the number is, right? Because that, or generally what the number is, because that's what we want. We want to be able to see. Now, people can, the same thing on the low side, right? People can tell when their blood sugars are dropping. And in fact, more people can tell when their blood sugars are going down than can tell when their blood sugars are going up, because the body responds in a very a very distinct way, right? To say, hey, the blood sugar, you're dropping, right? Your blood sugars are going down. On the high side, that's a little bit more vague. But I do have people that say, hey, I can tell if my blood sugar is over 200. I can tell if my blood sugar is, and they give a range. So what I was going to say earlier is I was going to say, in your room, wherever you are, in your space, wherever you are, if you can, without looking at the thermostat on the wall, right? Can you tell what temperature it is? Right? If you can do that, put that in the comments. Can you tell what temperature it is in your whatever space is? Because that's what we're essentially saying, right? That you can pick a number that corresponds to how you feel. Now, and once again, this is kind of, the probabilities and statistics and so forth. Now, you may be able to pick a number, the next 10 times. You say, oh yeah, my temperature in my room is 76, 76, 76, 73, 72. And you can be accurate, right? But the likelihood that you can do that with certainty is low. Okay. Now, unless you're like, I'm a sci-fi guy, unless you're one of those androids, right? So I watch Star Trek and those kinds of things. So Data, maybe he can tell. Or maybe even Geordi, with those visors, he can tell wavelengths and stuff. I don't know. Any of you guys are Trekkies out there? Let's see. Blind Guy says, I wonder if there's an eye health for Android. I was going to say something, but I stopped in my track because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's an eye health. The eye. I was going to say the eye health, right, is kind of like iPhone and eye this and eye that. I thought it was an Apple thing, but you're right. There could be, because there are all these new devices and new pieces of software that are out there. Yeah, if anybody knows, let us know. I mean, that would be a good thing to know. And once again, I'm not an Android person, so I can't really tell you much about how the Android works. And interestingly, for a lot of medical / software things, they'll come out with it for one, and then they'll come out for another, right? So we saw that with some of the continuous glucose monitors. And speaking about continuous glucose monitors, on this week, we are actually going to be dropping a video that we recorded with a description and an interview with Megan, who works for Dexcom. It's not a promotional video, but we talked about continuous glucose monitors. So pay attention to that. That should be coming out on Wednesday. Okay, on Wednesday. Awesome. All right. So let's see. What else do we have? Is there another place to check besides the finger? Is there another place to check besides the finger? And currently, the best place to check is the finger. There are lots of there's a lot of research that's going on in different technologies. So there's research in, because everyone thought, well, not everyone, but a lot of people thought that some of the watches, right? Because the watches, they can tell pulses and they can tell, oxygenation and lots of different things. So a lot of people thought that was going to be a way of checking blood sugars. Currently, we've not been able to successfully, right, bring to market anything that will check blood sugars transcutaneously, right? So, for instance, right now, if you go to your doctor's office, they take your finger and they put it in that device, and they can tell what your pulse is, and they can tell what your oxygenation is. And so people are like, well, we can do that. Well, why can't we check blood sugars? Just like that. But the technology has not been accurate enough, right, for us to do that. The other thing is saliva. So there are people who are looking at saliva to be able to check blood sugars. And you would think that in the saliva, you would expect, like if I ate a cookie, right, the blood sugar would be high because I ate the cookie. And so it would be inaccurate. But, surprisingly enough, it is pretty good at checking the sugar in the blood rather than the sugar that you ate. Okay, so it's a amazing technology. And then, of course, there's so we talked about sweat, right? So using sweat to check blood sugars is something that people have talked about for a long time. And so there's all this stuff that's going on right now in how to, because remember I talked, one of the barriers is it hurts. I don't know if any of you out there are and checking blood sugars, but it hurts, right? So when that lancet goes into your, it's kind of like, think about walking around and accidentally hitting your hand on a thumbtack, right? Yeah, that hurts. So imagine doing that, multiple times a day, and so you can begin to get why some people are apprehensive about checking their blood sugar, because it's painful. So right now, the place that we check blood sugars is in the finger. Now, the continuous monitors are actually checking blood sugars in the interstitium, right? So they go in the abdomen or in the back of the arm. And an interesting thing happens when you check blood sugars with a continuous monitor and then with a finger stick, right? So a couple of things. One, the finger stick, right, is probably more accurate because well, let me back up and let me say it this way. So there's a delay. So when you're checking blood sugar with a continuous monitor, the blood has to kind of go through your veins and arteries, and then it has to diffuse into the capillaries, and then the sensor has to pick it up, and then the sensor has to make that reaction that we talked about, and then that reaction has to be read, okay? So the blood sugar at your fingertip is a lot closer to what it is right now compared to the blood sugar that you would get in a monitor. So there's a delay between the two, for one. And then remember, we talked about the difference, the 20% difference, and it's not usually 20%. Like I said, technology has gotten much, much better, but there's also that. So a lot of times people will check their blood sugar, they'll look at their meter or this continuous monitor and say, hey, wait a minute, these numbers are not the same. Well, they cannot be the same for lots of different reasons. The other thing is, if you have just eaten, right, then those blood sugars are changing. So their blood sugars are going up because of the food. And so the monitor is not good at that, right? So you have to wait until the blood sugars are kind of stable before checking those. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got. So we talked about saliva. So what is the dawn phenomenon? What is the dawn phenomenon? And is this something that I should be concerned about? The dawn phenomenon. And you know what? I'm gonna hold on to that question for a minute, and let's see. Okay, so how about this one? Why does my blood sugar go up overnight when it is good at bedtime? Why does my blood sugar go up at night when it is good at bedtime? And once again, there's so many different reasons why this can be the case. And the reason I came to this question is I'm going to answer part of this, and then we're going to go back to this question about the dawn phenomenon, right? So multiple things that can be happening that are causing blood sugars to be higher in the morning, right, when they were good at night. And one of the first things is that your body is absorbing food that you ate, right? So the blood sugar can be good right now, but you ate something that's going to be absorbing as you sleep, and because of that, the blood sugar in the morning ends up being higher. We see that a lot with when you mix carbs with fat. The fat delays the rise in the carbs. So for instance, you sit down, you ate some pizza, right? And just a little while, you go to bed, which you shouldn't, by the way, eat the pizza and go to bed. But you ate the pizza and you checked the blood sugar, and the blood sugar is pretty good, but you're going to sleep, and overnight the body is absorbing the carbs, and it's a delay. And Actually, even if it's not a delay, if you finish eating, your blood sugar may not begin rising right then. If you're getting ready to go to sleep, it may rise later. And so it may be a consequence of what we're eating, right, that we just ate before we went to bed. It may be a consequence of the composition of what you ate, right, the carbs and the fat. It may be, and once again, the liver is always producing sugar. The liver is always producing sugar. And so the liver overnight is breaking down, so this gluconeogenesis, right? So it's making new sugar, and it's making new sugar because it's keeping you alive. So if you didn't eat right before going to bed, say you ate, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're going to bed now at 10 o'clock, the blood sugars are great, but the body is still making sugar all night. And if there's no mechanism for managing that, then when you wake up in the morning, the blood sugar is higher. Okay? So that's kind of not talking about the dawn phenomenon, but those are some reasons why it can be high. And so now going back to the dawn phenomenon. So dawn phenomenon is something that happens to all of us. Our bodies produce hormones in the morning as it's getting us ready to wake up, right? And getting us ready for the day. Growth hormone, cortisol. And so those hormones have the ability or have the effect of raising the blood sugar. So you go to bed and the blood sugars are good. And then in the morning, as you are, your body's getting you ready to wake up, right? It pumps you full of these hormones and the blood sugars rise. Now, the reason that someone who's not diabetic doesn't realize it is, one, they're not checking their blood sugar, right? And two, their bodies are able to blunt that effect and keep their blood sugars within normal. Remember, the abnormality in the person who lives with diabetes is that their body is not able to effectively take care of those blood sugars because of whether it's insulin resistance or because of insulin deficiency, as in type 1. And then there's another thing that they didn't ask this question, but I'm going to throw it in there, called the Smogy effect. Smogy effect. And the Smogy effect happens when someone goes to bed. Say they've taken too much, they go to bed and the blood sugars are normal, right? And they take too much insulin and the blood sugars drop. And the body responds by causing a rebound high. So their high is actually a result of having those lows in the middle of the night. And so boom, right? So they go to bed, the number's good, the blood sugar drops, the body says, no, we don't like this, and the body causes the blood sugar to go up, and so they end up waking up with a high number. Okay, so those are lots of different reasons why they can wake up with high blood sugars. Oh, very good question, though. All right, let's see. Let's see. Blind Guy has a question here. He said, I have a friend whose daughter has the continuous glucose monitor because she was diagnosed so young. Yeah, so I mean, the continuous monitor is an amazing device, and it has caused us to be able to, the continuous monitor is an amazing device. It has allowed us to see so much as it relates to how a particular person's diabetes works, right? So we are able to now, and people, I would say we, right? Someone who wears a continuous monitor is now able to look and see how specific things affect their blood sugars, right? Because before, remember with the finger stick, one of the things that's going on is that we're checking at, discrete times, right? But now you eat something and guess what? You watch that monitor and there he goes. The monitor, it's heading up. All right, so let's see. Let's go back to our. Right. So when should I check blood sugars? Right. So that's always an interesting one. When should I check blood sugars? And, we hear fasting blood sugars after a meal, before a meal, multiple times a day. And the answer for this one, it really kind of depends on how you're being treated in terms of medications, what our goals are, right? And your team, you and your physician and your care team, what you guys have come up with. So let's kind of walk through a couple of scenarios, right? So if someone is not on medication, they are managing it with lifestyle. And kudos to you if you are doing that, right? Because ultimately that's our goal. Our goal is as little medication as possible. So if you're doing that, right, then, I mean, do we really need you to check blood sugars 4 times a day? Probably not. Well, I should say probably no. Right? What we want to do is we want to be able to monitor the blood sugar within a reasonable pattern, so that should your blood sugar start going up, that we're able to catch that, right? So there are patients that we have that we'll tell them, hey, I want you to check, once in the morning, maybe check every other day, right? So we don't need you to have blood sugars, 3-4 times a day in that case, right? Once again, I'm going to say, talk to your healthcare provider, but that's kind of general, right? So if you're not on any medication, right? So we're just kind of monitoring this to make sure that we can catch things, and also to make sure that you're not having lows, because sometimes people can have lows. If you are on oral medications, we talked about this in our last video last week about medications. If you're on oral medications, right? So I tell folks that I want you to check blood sugars every morning. I want to know what we're starting out as. And then maybe randomly through the day. Call it kind of a scattered model, right? So check it in the morning, and then, one day maybe check it at lunch. One day check it at supper. One day check it at right before bedtime. And you want to do that, not just once, right? So if you're checking over 30 days, right? Every morning you should have one, and then just a random one, so that you'll end up having, hopefully, a week worth of lunches and a week worth of suppers and a week worth of bedtime, so that we get a good picture of where those blood sugars are. Okay. This before meals or after meal, and the way I kind of explain this to people, I want, if everything being equal, I want to know what the blood sugar is before the meal. Because if I check it after the meal, the question I have in my head is, was the blood sugar already high because we didn't do a good job either overnight? For instance, if it's breakfast, if we check it after breakfast, we don't know. Did you wake up with a high, or was it the food that caused it to go high? Okay. And particularly if we're gonna base our treatment on blood sugar, I want to know what it is before the meal. All right. And so I can treat it. If for instance I'm on insulin and so forth, because I can treat that. And I give the example of having a boulder on top of a hill. You know those black and white movies or those silent movies. There's a guy on top, and he's a criminal. He's the evil guy, and he sees some people at the bottom, and he rolls that boulder, and the boulder starts going faster and faster and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Right. So it would have been easier to stop that boulder on top of the hill, right? Rather than standing at the bottom. So that's what happens with blood sugars. The blood sugars, once they start going, it's much harder to bring those down. And so I'd much rather work on treating it before it gets to be this huge boulder. Okay. And then before or after meals, I will have people check their blood sugars after meals if I am concerned that we're missing something. So, for example, if their blood sugars before the meals are good and their A1C is bad. So, breakfast, you wake up in the morning, they're good. Before breakfast, before supper, before bedtime, they're great. But A1C is still too high. And I say, wait a minute, something's going on. Something is happening somewhere. So let's go back and let's check blood sugars after a meal. Okay. And usually 2 hours after the meal. And then, of course, people who are on multiple injections, and these are probably for people who are on insulin, who are having to treat, and not just insulin, basal insulin is one thing, that's the 24-hour insulin, but insulin that they're taking with their meals. So we want to be able to, once again, match the blood sugar with what they're eating and how we're going to treat it. Right. So I know that was a kind of a big, long answer to this thing. When should I check? It depends. And then we can go from very simple, right, which is, hey, check every other day. And then if we are having more intense therapy, then we've got to check more often. All right. Let's go back here for a sec. And let's answer this question from Blind Guy. He says, explain the role of the liver working overnight helps to understand. Let me put it on the screen. Yeah. Helps to understand the high sugars in the morning. It does. Because it can be very frustrating, right? Because you've done everything that day, right? You've followed the diet, you've exercised, you've done what everybody's been telling you, and you go to bed and the blood sugar is perfect, right? Or ideal, and you're like, oh man, I got that day out of the way, and then you wake up the next morning and the blood sugar's high. Like what happened, right? So that can be very frustrating. All right, and so let's talk a little bit about how to build checking into your day. How to build checking into your day. Checking into everything that's involving and surrounding diabetes really has to do with the same types of things that we talk about when we talk about changing habits, building habits, redesigning habits, changing mindset. It does. From the barriers that we talked about earlier, right, to checking blood, to treating blood sugars, to the eating, to the exercising, all of it has to do with how do we change and how do we set ourselves up for success. Set ourselves up. I love that. Ooh, yeah. Okay. Set ourselves up for success, right? How do we do that? In anything that you do, if you just kind of pop out and say, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and you've not prepared, you don't have a plan, then the likelihood of success goes down. And so how do we set ourselves up for success? Number one, make checking convenient. Whoa! What does that mean? That means if your glucose meter is in the kitchen when you wake up in the morning and you're doing all your morning routine, and then you've got to go, you're going to get breakfast, and then you're going to check it, or you're going to bring it back to the bathroom to check, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right? Because I know, sometimes I put stuff right in the middle of the floor, because if I don't do that, right, on my way out, I'll forget it. My wife will say, hey, take this or do that, or I have a plan to do something, but if I don't make it convenient for me to remember to do that, right, then it's not going to happen. And it's the same thing with checking. And really what we want to do, that's a perfect one though, right? Putting the meter in the bathroom, right? Now, let me ask a question. I'm going to come close. They tell me I can do this on here, but I'm going to just bring myself close. I would bet that not many of us had to have someone tell us that we needed to brush our teeth this morning. Right? And I would bet over the last 365 days, regardless of COVID and so forth, right? There are a handful of times where you went through your morning routine and then you thought to yourself, oh my gosh, I didn't brush my teeth. Why? Because brushing your teeth it has become such a normal part of what you do. You don't even think about it. Sometimes you go and think, oh, blah, blah, and you're done, right? So setting yourself up for success, part of it is making it convenient. A part of it is establishing a routine. What am I going to do? What is my routine? I get up in the morning. I don't look at your Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, by the way, when you get up first in the morning. Put that aside, right? Go do your stuff, right? So get up in the morning. I go to the bathroom. I get in the shower. I shower. Come on. I brush my teeth, or I brush my teeth, then go in the shower, whichever one you do, right? And right there, my routine is I'm checking blood sugar. That's your one blood sugar for the day. Don't try to go from not checking to checking 4 times. That's just ease into it. Right? We're setting ourselves up for success. Okay? Set alarms. Right? In my phone, I have alarms set for all kinds of stuff, right? I've got two alarms, well, two, one, two. I've got two alarms to wake me up in the morning. I've got an alarm that says, hey, it's time to leave, right? I've got an alarm that says it's 2 minutes before you meet with my assistant. I've got an alarm that says, hey, it's time for our team meeting at work. I've got an alarm that says, hey, it's time to get back to work to start seeing patients. I got an alarm that says, hey, it's time to leave, right, work and call your wife, right? I got an alarm that says, did you talk to your son today, right? Now, that may be excessive. Yes, it may be. I know. But set an alarm. We've got this. Where is my phone? Yeah, we've got this thing right? I mean, this device that we all carry around with us is so much more powerful than anything they had, years and years ago. And there's so much that it can do that we don't use it for. So set an alarm, right? That says, hey, and decide that when the alarm goes off, guess what? I'm going to stop and do what that alarm says. Because I've set alarms before that then I didn't do what it says, right? Okay. Let's see. The refrigerator method. What is that? I came up with that, right? I made that one up. So if you hear that anywhere, say, no, that's not yours. Dr. Wood came up with that on today. What's today's date? The 15th of November. The refrigerator method. Take a piece of paper, tape it to the refrigerator, and write the days on it. So every time you go in the refrigerator, hey, oh my goodness, I missed that day, right? Put that number down, right? So once again, we're putting things in place that will help us do what we're supposed to do, right? The refrigerator method. And then finally, or I shouldn't say finally, but get some support, right? Talk to your friends, right? Talk to people around you, talk to your cousin, talk to your whoever and say, hey, I need your help, right? I am trying to check my blood sugar. Can you call me tomorrow? Can you call me in the morning? Can you do such and such? Right? I am learning a very interesting lesson, right? At this stage in my life. People who succeed have people around them who support them. Right? Your athletes, they have coaches. Your musicians, they have teachers and tutors, right? The Williams girls, Serena, Venus and Serena, Tiger Woods, right? Michael Jordan, all those people, guess what they had around them? They had people that were supporting them. They had coaches, right? So find a support system, right? Play a game with yourself, right? One of the wonderful things I like to see is if I'm doing something, I want to see what it's doing. So the app that comes with your phone or app that comes with your meter, use it. So you can see the blood sugars tracking in there, right? Sometimes when you look at the meter, you see that one number. It doesn't do anything for you, right? But this way you can see what's going on. Join a Facebook group, right? And I just, as soon as I said that, the app went out of my head. Okay. But anyway, some of these apps will allow you to join a group, and within the group, right, you guys share your blood sugars, right? Right. One of the things that we want to do, and you guys can put this in the comments, right? We want to have a group, right? So people can go in and they can give suggestions to each other and talk about their wins and talk about how things are going, right? So that's huge, right? So we want to get some support. So make it convenient. Establish a routine. Set alarms. Use the refrigerator method if you need to, and then get some support. And you will find that if you do those things, then you will have a more successful time at staying on track with your blood sugars. All right, let's see what we got in here. Let me try to catch up. Let's see. Blind Guy says, the boulder analogy makes sense. Get ahead. That's right. Get ahead of the problem. And this can be applied. Wow. So you guys are kind of giving, right? So get ahead of the problem. This can be applied to so many different things, that analogy, right? Right. So many things in our lives, whether it's weight, our diet, saving money, a relationship, right? And we're going to talk about that in just a second, right? The moment makes sense. Go get ahead of the problem. Hey, Steve, man, how you doing? Just catching you. Awesome. Glad that you were able to make it. And Maria's saying, hey, we know everyone's going into the fridge, so there is no excuse at that point. That's right. Now, you want to hear something? So years ago, my wife and I were on a diet, and so my part for the diet, she cut out the little menu things and she put it on the refrigerator. And I would go in and I would look at the menu, and I would just open the refrigerator and grab something and eat something else. Okay, bad, right? So you're right, but you got to be committed to it. You got to be committed. And Maria said, group diabetes 101. I love it. Diabetes 101. So let's talk a little bit. Here's my thought for today. Whatever we do, in whatever phase of our lives we are in, whether it's diabetes, weight management, whether it's saving money, building a relationship, all those things take commitment. And all of those things begin with a simple first step. Don't think of the magnitude of what has to be done, because if you do, that's overwhelming. Begin with a simple step. And if you do that consistently, over time, with tenacity, whatever it is that you are trying to do has to come to fruition, right? That's the whole idea behind saving and compounding, right? I was talking to my son yesterday and I said, hey, would you like to get a penny a day, right? And start saving that penny. He's like, oh, I don't want a penny, right? But consistency, small steps over time. If we're dedicated, then we get what we want. I'm going to say that again. Small steps over time, if we're consistent, will lead to our success. So that's my thought for today. As we're talking about blood sugars, it is a small step. And we want to do that consistently so that we can stay on track with our diabetes. We are so excited that you guys joined us tonight on this show. We are excited to have answered your questions and talk with you and just have some fun. I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy the fact that you are here. If you've not already done so, please remember to go to our social media platforms, LinkedIn, TikTok. Catch us next week. We're going to have a special guest with us, Richard Harding from Father and Son Cooking. He's going to be sharing a recipe with us on our live and allowing you to ask some questions. And then our Twitter feed, and we would love to have your support. If you like what we're doing, please go to buymeacoffee.com/DwayneWoodMD and show your support for our channel. And then all of our programs that you can get to live, of course, 7 o'clock Monday nights, TikTok on Friday, and then every day you will get something on our Twitter feed. On Wednesday, look for that video that we're going to drop on continuous glucose monitors, a discussion with Megan, who works for Dexcom. Once again, it is not promotional, but she happens to use a Dexcom and so we're showing you that. All right. Well, thank you once again for being here. This is Dr. Dwayne Wood from Diabetes and Endocrine Wellness Center, helping you understand your body so you can take charge of your health. Let's get some music and let's get on out.